Spectrum News 1 presents LA Times The Envelope Roundtable, brought to you by the Apple TV Plus comedy series Dickinson, for your Emmy consideration in all eligible categories.
This is the Los Angeles Times series, The Envelope Roundtable, Showrunners, our discussions with the most creative talents in entertainment. Steve McQueen blurs the lines between TV and film with Small Acts, a 5-part anthology series that explores life in Britain's West Indian communities from the late 1960s to the mid-1980s.
Black people, hands up! Black people, hands up! Black people, hands up!
Elena Smith creates an audacious coming-of-age tale of a beloved poet that keenly reflects the realities of today with Dickinson.
Get up, Emily.
Oh.
Don't
make me go. Whoa.
Today is going to be good for you.
But I hate my life and I truly want to die.
Bruce Miller tells the dystopian story of a totalitarian society in which women are forced to live a life of servitude in The Handmaid's Tale.
You know, I thought that once you were out of Gilead, once you were out of that uniform, that you would come back to yourself.
I am as you made me.
Susan Laurie Parks examines the extraordinary life and art of Aretha Franklin in Genius Aretha, and how her voice came to capture the spirit of the civil rights movement. Jen Statsky looks at what happens when a veteran Las Vegas comedian, whose star power has seen better days, hires a young comedy writer to resuscitate her career.
Wow. It's like watching Picasso sing.
You mean paint?
No.
And Chris Van Duzen translates a book series set in Regency-era London, first following the complicated romance between a beautiful young aristocrat and a dashing duke in Bridgerton.
It reminds me of waking up in the country. First thing in the morning, when I'm all alone.
Hi everyone, I'm Yvonne Villarreal and I write about television for The Times. For many of us, television has been our trusted companion during this unusual moment in history. Shows have comforted us, they've distracted us, and they've made us think. So I'm delighted to be here with the creative minds behind 6 of the most distinctive shows on TV. You know, before we start, guys, I just want to thank you for making our time at home more bearable. So kudos to you. You know, we're doing this over Zoom right now, and for many of us, we've had to adapt the way we work. Elena, I know you've started work on the 3rd season of Dickinson through Zoom. You conducted your writer's room this way. How would you say that affected the creative process?
We need our writer's rooms back, but this was a really special experience because we were writing season 3 of Dickinson, which takes place in the Civil War, and we were working last summer over Zoom in the midst of a pandemic and Black Lives Matter uprising with a writer's room that was very diverse in all kinds of ways. And I really felt like our Zoom room became a kind of consciousness raising, I don't want to say support group, because it wasn't like all the conversations were comfortable, but it was a place where I could come together with some of the minds that I most respect in the world and talk about literally day to day what was happening and translate it into story. And so that was pretty wonderful, but it's also wild because there are people in that writer's room that I've still never met in person. And I had basically hired them over the internet. And then the idea was that we would all have a writer's room together in Los Angeles, but instead it was this Zoom room in a pandemic.
Well, Bruce, I mean, I've been in the Handmaid's Tale writer's room, and I know, there's couches instead of a conference table, and it's a very comfortable environment. And I guess, that's really essential when you're having, delicate conversations when people are opening up about personal topics. So how does doing it over Zoom change things? And are there aspects that you actually think you benefited from?
It does change things to be operating remotely, but I don't know whether it's necessarily positive or negative. I just think it's a little bit different. And also, our show is in the position of, we had been working together as a staff for a long time. So I think when you're meeting new people or bringing someone new in, that's a completely different dynamic. The thing I do have to say is I like having a lot more time to think by myself, before and after the writer's room. I thought the writer's room time was very efficient, when it was on Zoom. And I think because no one particularly liked Zoom.
A lot of your shows revolve around real figures. Susan Laurie, when you're exploring a life as rich and complicated as someone like Aretha Franklin, what goes into sort of shaping the narrative? Like, where do you start?
Yeah, I was really lucky because, the word before Aretha, we've got genius. So much of the, every choice we made in making Genius Aretha was how to look at Aretha Franklin's life through the lens of genius, a word, genius, that is most often used historically to denote white European men. If you've done any musical critical theory, reading, which I have done quite a bit of. So to really look at the life of a Black American musician, genius, woman, mother, brilliant singer, brilliant musician, through the lens of genius, all our choices were made from that.
I never loved a man the way that I love you.
And I was blessed to have a writer's room, and a producing team that just were totally down with that. And we're able to make choices that all of them were historically plausible. And some of them might have been, we use our poetic license like we all do, right? When you're writing a historical character, we're going to work that poetic license.
Well, Elena, talk about the poetic license that you sort of took. I mean, you've talked about how you wanted to play with the details of Emily's life and sort of the themes that emerge from her poems to sort of reflect the realities of today.
It's a funny thing with our show, because while everything that we do in the show is in some way grounded in fact or biographical detail or a sort of found scrap of Emily's own writing, I'm not particularly concerned with representing the real Emily Dickinson. That's actually very uninteresting to me. I am interested in representing the sort of cultural avatar of Emily Dickinson and what she means to us now, which has a lot more to do with her creative spirit and certain kind of fundamental paradoxes or ironies of her life and the way that she's been received in culture, as opposed to getting the facts right about, the real Emily Dickinson, which no matter what we can say about her, she was a person who lived in the 19th century. And our show takes place in I would call it a stylized portrait of the 21st century, where we are really using the past as a kind of Instagram filter for the present.
And I don't know about you all, but I want to dance.
Damn! You stole that?
Let me look hot.
And I'm doing that because I want to point out all the ways in which the past and the present are not as far apart as we like to think, particularly for women, people of color, queer people, anyone who has been traditionally marginalized by, what we call history. So, yeah. And I mean, there's certainly people on this panel whose work has spoken to that so eloquently and inspired, Dickinson to, like, in all the years that I was kind of ruminating on Dickinson. I know that 12 Years a Slave was a really important film for me, and Susan Laurie's plays, especially, I would say ones that looked at the figure of Abraham Lincoln in really unexpected ways. And I think that, the Civil War period, it just keeps getting more relevant for us in America. And I'd love if we could move past it, but I don't think that we have yet. So I don't know.
Well, to build off of that, like, what other culture, what other art sort of informs the work that you do?
For me, on Bridgerton, I would say it was about just immersing myself. I wrote the pilot over there in London and spending as much time in the UK as possible and going to as many amazing country homes and castles and palaces, as many of those that I could see and that I had access to. And it was also, I looked at a lot of period pieces. I've always been a fan of the genre. There's a 1995 Pride and Prejudice BBC adaptation that was just, and that's Colin Firth in his white shirt coming out of the lake. I watched that on repeat, and that was a lot of inspiration for me. But it was also, Colin Firth coming out of that lake in his white shirt. I always wanted to do a period piece that went a little further than that, and that pushed a few more boundaries and challenged the idea of what a period piece could really be, and not staying in one particular box on Bridgerton.
You've always amused me, Miss Bridgerton, ever since I was a schoolboy and you were.
Oh, but 5?
How much fear did you feel your first day as a showrunner? I mean, for you, Chris, you're coming from the world of Shonda Rhimes. Like, you worked on Scandal, you worked on Grey's Anatomy. Did you feel when you were on Bridgerton, let me email or call or shoot Shonda a text about this, I'm not quite sure what I should do? Did you sort of lean on her? Like, how were you feeling sort of stepping into this role?
I think, with any show, I think that there's a certain amount of pressure that comes along with this job. And, Sean has been a tremendous resource. And of course I leaned on her. But, these books, they're so beloved, the Bridgerton books written by Julia Quinn. They have such a passionate fan base that cares so deeply about these characters and these stories. So that in and of itself came with a lot of pressure, I would say. But it was a healthy kind of pressure. And I think it made me work that much harder and made me want to crack the adaptation that much more. I think, when I first read the books, truthfully, I didn't immediately know exactly how I was going to put my own spin on things. And I was drawn to the material. I've always loved a good period piece. But my kind of self-imposed mandate for the show was really, figuring out a way to turn this more traditional, sometimes conservative genre on its head and make something fresh and topical and timely. And I think that posed a really interesting challenge for me and the writers in the room. And, really early on, the way that I wanted to figure out how to do it was really, you look at these period pieces, you look at the books, and they are lily white. They are a white world. And injecting race into this world was something that I really wanted to do because I hadn't really seen it done before. And if I was going to do a show that had this, this contemporary sensibility about it, and it's a modern show for a modern audience, it needed to go for the casting and the characters. And I immediately, I became a little obsessed as far as cracking that. And it really, the solution, I think, came from working with historians, and consultants and developing the show. So, I was never afraid to ask for help. And really early on, there was this theory that I became aware of Queen Charlotte and how Queen Charlotte was technically England's very first actual queen of color. And that's something a lot of historians feel that there's evidence for today.
Your queen commands it. Of course. Your Majesty.
When I heard that, it was something that really resonated with me. And I think the show started to come into focus for me at that point, as far as being something that was going to explore this fascinating marriage of history and fantasy. And that's what really sparked my interest in these books from the beginning. Race wasn't mentioned in the books at all. And Queen Charlotte was a character I created specifically for the show. And I think once I knew I was going to have this Black queen into this world, everything else started to fall into place. And she provided the basis for this multi-hued, multi-ethnic, multiracial society that the show was going to be set in.
Well, Steve, I want to talk about Small Acts. This is a project that you have been working on for 11 years. What kept you going? Describe what it is like when there's a passion project that keeps tugging at you and wanting you to get it made.
It was about timing more than anything else. My own timing, where I was in my life at a certain moment. I knew once I planted the seed 11 years ago, obviously I see how it sprouted, what it transformed in, what it translated into, really. And it became a want and a need, and it became much more stronger, much more poignant in its sort of emerging. Anyway, we got to the end of the situation where I got the chance to actually do it. And it was about the journey in a way. It was about that journey because it was about my own sort of development, because it was about, Black West Indian people in the UK from, the late 60s to the sort of early 80s.
Why do you back me? You're silent now. Why do you back me? I'm out there on the field with no backup. Answer the question. Are you deaf? We are not men. This is a struggle. I'm sick of this. Hey, man.
That journey of 11 years was all about sort of me, sorting myself out and getting myself ready for the pending event. And again, it's like, seeing your parents when you're a teenager and then seeing them when you're an adult, and how you look at it and how you see it differently from a different vantage point. So it was about preparing myself in my own sort of maturity during that time.
What about the rest of you? Have you had projects like that are sort of gnawing at you to pay attention to them? And how do you know when you should give up on that idea? When the timing isn't right, or, if other things are on your plate. Jen?
When every network passes, that's when you say, I'm new. The Hacks actually is an idea that my co-creators, Lucia Agnello and Paul Downs, and it was kind of the same thing. We had the idea for this show 6 years ago, I think. It was 2015. And we just we got pulled in different directions. We each were all working on different things, but we kept coming back to this idea.
So cool they let you move into a cheesecake factory.
Is that where you wait tables? That seems like a better fit.
I'd rather sling bang bang chicken and shrimp all day than work here, you classist monster.
We can start early tomorrow.
I think you just kind of know something is worth pursuing if we're all friends in real life. And so if you're hanging out and you keep coming back to this idea and keep talking about it, that's kind of a sign that there's something there. If when you're not thinking about the idea, it kind of seeps into your real world and your real life, and you're pitching on it without even meaning to. And as far as when to give up on an idea, I think what happens is over time, if that doesn't happen, if the idea doesn't keep creeping back into your brain and you're thinking about it over and over, then you kind of know maybe there's not enough here to pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Your projects deal with some heavy subject matters, and something I noticed on Twitter was people having the appetite to watch your projects, The Handmaid's Tale, but they were also expressing that they weren't sure if they had the emotional bandwidth to watch them right now. And I'm curious, do you think of, what would you say to someone reluctant to engage with your work because of the challenging subject matter? Is it something you think about? Bruce, let's start with you. It's something you've heard since maybe the beginning of Handmaid's Tale.
Our show especially is triggering on a million levels for people who have a million different kinds of traumas. And I think if you don't, I certainly can see not wanting to watch heavy material during these times.
It's just she knew she'd probably never see me again. Right? She knew she'd probably never see either of us again. And that's the choice that she made. And, you know, I gotta respect it. I gotta respect her.
I've been watching, Escape to the Country, and the wonderful shows that my 16-year-old daughter, brings me in to watch. So I don't know. First of all, I don't want my show to feel like medicine. You want it to be a cathartic, entertaining experience, as weird as that seems. And it is in its own way diverting. I mean, it's not diverting to a good place, but it's escapism, just escape to terrible places.
I think people are comforted by different things. And I just want to say to Bruce, thank you for The Handmaid's Tale, because I mean, for me, I find it comforting when people are honest about the dark stuff too. And, it actually takes a lot to hold attention, and The Handmaid's Tale absolutely does. And I really appreciate the unflinchingness of it.
Well, I also feel that people now, if anything, if ever there was a time where people are wanting information, wanting to be enlightened, wanting to engage, wanting to find out, wanting to sort of look over their shoulder or see what's actually happening, it's now. So this is the time where sort of people want to be sort of engaged in things which are going to sort of educate them or enlighten them or sort of challenge them. Absolutely. I don't think there's ever been a better time.
Stephanie! Why are you making so much noise?
Oh, wait, Mummy.
Mummy's at work. I've been kicked out of school.
What? Oh, be quiet, Kingsley. That's not funny. Mummy's sleeping.
Mummy's not here. She had to meet the headmaster, and it's really... They're sending me to a stupid
Stop
school.
swearing in the house. You're going to get us both killed.
With our 5 episodes, there's rough, there's smooth, there's joy, there's pain, there's all kinds of... And also, it's all about triumph. All this film's about triumph. Mangrove is about, again, fighting all the odds and winning. Every single one of the episodes are about, battling the odds and winning. So it's actually triumphant, all of them, every single one of them. Sometimes you have to go for a gauntlet. It's all about getting to the other side. And things like Lover's Rock is completely joyous. And things like education, again, it's all about the awe of being a child and the wonder. And again, it's like every single fairy tale. Hansel and Gretel, they're very dark, but then again, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's glorious. So I think, I don't want to bore people. I want to entertain people. I want to give them something to grapple with, and then they get to the finishing line, and until they've gone through something that they've sort of can enjoy.
Have you told everyone the big news?
I couldn't possibly eat. I am much too excited.
Go, Emily! 3, 2, 1. Good evening.
Hello, everybody. It's me. I am getting published.
I'm wild.
I'm at all of the balls. I'm a baller. She's so extra.
Is that a bad thing?
Oh, no.
You go out there and own this.
Now I'm sort of curious what you guys have been watching during this time. So often we hear, the people making the art don't have the time to consume it. They don't have time to watch TV because, there's deadlines and various things. Is there a show that you discovered, a show you've rediscovered during this time? What were you watching?
I was just going to say, I have a much more exhaustive to-watch list than a watch list at the moment. I do find it hard to kind of, come home after doing this job and to sit down and watch, a television show. So I watch a lot of reality TV, truthfully, just anything that can honestly dance in front of my eyes at the end of a day. That's really...
What's your show? We got to hear.
Yeah, tell us the show, Chris.
Yeah.
90 Day Fiancé, Real Housewives, what is it?
All of those, all the Real Housewives, all, the challenge on MTV, all the MTV shows, all the Bravo shows, all of those things are really what sweep, take me away from the pressures of the day.
For me, it's a testament to Jean Smart, because I would be at work with her all day shooting, and then I would go home and rewatch Designing Women because it's so good. And I was same thing. I just wanted to kind of rewatch old stuff that I loved, and so that's been I'm still watching it too. That's been my pandemic show.
Well, Jen, to build off that, I want to talk about the importance of building trust with your actors. And when you're working with someone like Jean Smart, for Hacks, and for those that don't know, Hacks is about a fading Las Vegas comedian who sort of enlists this writer to sort of resuscitate her career. And, Jean Smart, is Jean Smart. A veteran, everything she does is amazing. How intimidating was it to sort of develop that trust with her? What went into developing it? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, Jean is an icon, truly, and so yeah, we give her so much credit, Paul, Lucci, and I, my co-creators, because she didn't know us when she signed on the show. She had never worked with us, and we met with her. She read the script, we met with her, and from day one, she just really dove in with her full heart and head and everything, and so we felt so, when we developed this part, we always wanted someone who was so funny, in their bones, deeply funny, but also could play more dramatic, grounded moments as well. And when you start making that list of actresses, it's not a super long list. And in our minds, Jean was at the very top of it because she's so incredibly gifted at both sides of the coin.
It just gets harder. So don't complain to me that I'm making your life hard. You don't even know what that means. Oh, good, my ride's here.
We just felt so lucky from day one. And I think we all, Paul Lucci and I, we come from an improv background. We all started doing comedy in New York. And so we're super collaborative. So I think what helped the trust and in any creative relationship is just keeping lines of communication super open, talking to her about the script. We said, call us if you have questions, call us if you want to talk about a joke. And she did. And so I think that really, as we went on, helped build that trust. And yeah, it's just, we still I'm in the edit watching cuts and I'm we got Jean Smart. This is crazy.
There's a moment in episode 2 where Jean Smart is replacing a CO2 tank for her soda machine in her kitchen. Yep. And I just wonder, did Jean turn to you and say, what the hell is this?
There we go.
The way it plays out is so, it's so perfect. And I just wonder, was she just totally game?
It's funny because Jean, especially in the past few years of her career, has done so much drama and she's been so good. But Jean is so funny. She is a comedian, truly. And so she immediately got it. She knew what it was, and she knew what it was, but there's so many things in that scene, like her putting her high heel up onto the shelf while she does it and grunting. There's so many little details in that scene that are all Jean, and she added to it. She got it immediately.
Chris, I'm sort of curious, when you're building a world like the one we see in Bridgerton, how do you know when a script is done? Is it just when the deadline comes? For you, what's your test there?
It's honestly never done. That's the truthful answer. I feel like I still would love, I watched season 1 and I could still go back and add a line here or tweak something there. I feel like it's a constant process that you from pitching ideas in the room through outlining, through writing, all the way through production, all the way through post, really, and seeing it come together. A lot of, we always say at the show, like the final rewrite is actually the in post production, the editing. So it's really it's a long process, and I feel like honestly it's never done.
Elena, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's I definitely agree about the final rewrite being in editing, and finding the right editors who get the vision as much as you do it's that, to me, actually, like, that's the most fun relationship of all, is with the editors in post. And and not just the editors, but our music supervisor, our VFX person. We just have our sound designer. We have so much fun in post. But the writing process of Dickinson is much, much longer than a traditional television writing process. And basically, I have these relatively short writers' rooms that I come into it with, like, a vision of the season, and we generate first drafts out of those rooms. But then I spend months rewriting all the scripts, and we go into production with all the scripts written. And the only reason why we can make the show is because of that, because we have the ability to prep off of, I mean, it's essentially like a movie, in 10 parts. There's obviously some rewriting that occurs throughout, but much less than I think would be if we were sort of midway through the writing process. And also, once we get to the production phase, it's basically me and my co-EP Robbie McDonald, who's been a writer on the show all 3 seasons. And but it's a very much like a controlled process from the scripts, basically. And that's kind of how we managed to make this period show that has so many tonal insanities that we're trying to thread all the time.
Well, music plays such an important and dynamic role in most of your series. And Susan Laurie, I've heard you talk before about the way music sort of influences the way you write, like even the structure of the way you write. And so how did that play out when working on a narrative largely fueled by music?
Right. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. It's in whether I'm writing a piece that features music front and center like Genius Aretha or not, I always take music into account. I write almost as if I'm writing lyrics to some things that burst into song, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're just lines of dialogue. But with Genius Aretha, it was really every aspect of the show. We really worked toward making it as if it were a musical. Gestures that she would do became foundational elements for songs that she would work out in the studio later. So they became really wonderful opportunities for plot points. There was a moment in episode 1 where Cynthia Erivo, Aretha, is in a fight with her husband Ted, and she yells at him, "You said that you loved me." And the physical action, I almost said choreography. The physical action is Cynthia Aretha is beating on Ted's chest. Malcolm Barrett. She's beating on his chest, and it's, "You said that you loved me." And we shot that scene, and then later in the studio, Aretha's talking to the musicians about how she wants a line of a guitar line to go, a guitar riff. And this was one of the places where we used our poetic license. And I crafted a scene where Aretha basically uses her life. "You said that you loved me," for the guitar riff in Save Me, which goes bump ba-dum, bump 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 ba-dum, bump bump, and then the horns go ba-da ba-da ba-da. "You said that you loved me." And so she uses her life. So we're always through the whole series threading, letting music inform the way that the characters speak, the way that the characters walk.
You didn't want me. Somebody help me. This man wants to tell me. I'm begging you to save me. Get somebody to save me. Save me, save me. All in the Cape Crusader, Green Hornet Cater too. I'm in so much trouble, I don't know what to do.
And it's tricky because in no other Genius before, until season 3, did our main character burst into song. I mean, which raises the difficulty in my experience. I mean, when you write a drama or a comedy, it's great and it's hard. And then when you write a comedy or a drama where there is song, where the characters are singing, it raises the level of difficulty in my experience. It just took it through the roof. Especially with COVID, especially with wearing the masks. And we had one of our shutdowns was because the choirs were masked and then they sang and then there was an outbreak.
Wow.
So it just makes it so much more difficult. Cynthia had to do recordings in the studio that then she had to work with on set. And she loved to sing live, which was brilliant. So there was just a lot to work with there. Yeah, a lot.
Well, Steve, on Small Acts, the music is very much the connective tissue binding all the 5 parts together. And there's a moment in Lovers Rock where the Janet Kay song sort of cuts out, but the party goers are keeping it going. And it's such a breathtaking moment. Talk about the way you sort of saw music functioning in Small Acts.
Well, it's the heartbeat. It's the sort of, it's the solace. It's the sort of thing which is the spiritualization of people's lives, the thing that is tangible, that is a sort of reassurance. It's why people go to work in the morning. It's why people go to bed at night and want to wake up in the morning. It's the sort of, it's in the bloodstream of each and every one of the characters. And, it's Black people have to sort of, it's the only thing that they can actually do, again, to sort of transform and transcend themselves into another sphere other than some of the unfortunate realities that they found themselves in some places in the world. So it's the root and the foundation of the series was that. And the part in Silly Games, a blues party which I used to go to, but my blues parties were in the sort of 80s, mid-80s, 90s. And so the shebeens where, you get them, shebeens, you get them in Ireland too, you pay your money, you get your drink, you get your paper cup, your party, and you get your, the music. And what was so beautiful about those parties, it was because Black people were not, welcome in clubs in London. They were not welcome. There was a quota if you were allowed in, if ever. So people said, you know what? Screw that, we'll make our own. So people used to sort of clear out the furniture and make sort of these sort of, clubs in their houses. And, sometimes there's be birthday parties, intertwined with sort of, making a bit of, cash on the side. And what was so beautiful about that was when you were in the blues, whatever, and people used to work, they used to work 9 to 5, and they used to make the dresses. They used to get the patterns. My mother in the early 60s, she used to sort of, have the patterns for a dress for the blues on the Saturday night. So people used to work 9 to 5 and to be working for that Saturday. And, again, it was a space of spiritualization in a way because it was their reality. And of course, for young people too, teenagers and young people, parties and the music was real. That we dressed up in your clothes or you went into that party and the music, it wasn't pretend, it wasn't, it wasn't fancy dress. The music was real, falling in love was real, your clothes, how you look was real, it was real. So it's a kind of a reality. But of course, in this context, with Black people in London in the late 70s, early 80s, these parties were circumnavigated by crocodiles and alligators.
Hello, come here then. Come here.
Knock off, wankers.
the institutions of power, the police, XYZ, the social aspects of what was going on outside there. But for a moment on a Saturday night, people could sort of, reach for the stars, and that was it.
Elena, you're on a show where I think it's safe to say the fan base is very passionate. Very passionate. Has there been an audience reaction that surprised you about a moment, a scene, a narrative choice that you were sort of taken aback by?
Oh yeah, I have a good answer to this. The fans they outsmarted me in one moment, which is that when Emily and Sue have their glorious lovemaking extravaganza throughout the whole house at the end of season 2. Spoiler.
I can't escape from you because the only true thing I will ever feel is my love for you.
But all the fans were like, oh my God, I guess Maggie's in the kitchen and she made them all that food. And like, they're all like, Maggie is Emily's maid. And I hadn't thought that Maggie was in the house specifically at that time, but I like it. I feel like that is classic Maggie to, enable some extra freedom for Emily to be herself and get it on. So yeah, that was a fun one.
Well, Chris, you're dealing with a passionate fan base right now, and there was a lot of reaction to the news of Reggae Jean Page not returning, even though it sort of doesn't really mess with the sort of path that you're taking with the show. But were you surprised by the sort of headlines that got, and like how are you sort of thinking about how do we make this world rich enough where they're still going to come back to us?
I don't know if I was surprised because I fell in love with him watching the show and working with him. And I knew that, the world felt really strongly about him and he's so amazing and incredible. But this was the plan from the beginning. And really what got me excited about the project and drew me to these books was that every season is kind of a close-ended season.
What of you? What of me? You are the firstborn Bridgerton of a firstborn Bridgerton 9 times over. Where is your wife? You shall need to sire an heir. I'm in possession of something that you are not. Brothers.
And it's kind of like an anthology a little bit, whereas as far as we get to explore a new love story every season. So the first season was Daphne and Simon, and this next season we're shooting now, season 2, is Anthony Bridgerton's story. And so we have a new love interest for him, a new family coming to town, new characters, and it's exciting and it's fun and it keeps things fresh. And I found that really, really refreshing as far as you can tell a close-ended love story and you could have a happily ever after and a happy ending, and you don't have to create all these fake reasons for why your main couple can't be together season after season. So I found that incredibly refreshing.
Well, final question to you guys, and not to get too existential here, but what most excites you and what most worries you about the entertainment industry right now? It's gone through a lot of changes, and we've seen that it's adapted to a lot of changes. Steve, why don't we start with you?
I think the appetite of the audiences is huge, and that excites me. And I think they push us, they push the artists, the writers, the creators to sort of, feed that curiosity and feel that need, that want, that must that they want. And that's great. I mean, we've seen people sort of, talk about shows and be just sort of excited about things and sharing things. And because I imagine we have been very much a part of people's every day, because we've been inviting to people's homes at a time when, often people couldn't leave their home. So that's been a huge privilege. The downside, or the sort of other side of that, I don't know. There's so many, to be honest. I wouldn't know where to bloody start, to be honest. I'll stick. You know what? I'll stick with the positive for now, because there's so many things to sort of unfortunately be wary of. But I'll stick with what I just said and just keep it on the up.
Positive. Bruce?
So I think that the last year was a mother of invention, but we should look at it that way. But the best thing I think is, looking around this panel, just the diversity, it's what it is, the audience appetite, but the audience appetite for diversity of kinds of television and entertainment and shows. And across the board, I always feel like, anytime I get to see something I haven't seen before or a kind of show I haven't seen before, that's been spectacular. And I think kind of the proliferation of different platforms has helped, but really where that helps is there's all these platforms, and that there's some sliver of a space for those weird kids in Kenya to put their videos up on YouTube and make movies in the street, or where their kids are doing it in Amsterdam and all these kinds of places. It's wonderful that there's room for that stuff now, because the world is so big and because everybody's not watching a 1 hour show, like on Thursday night at this time on one of 3 networks. All the variation in styles and kinds of things people are watching, the way they're watching, all that stuff, just it makes it so much more of a fun time to look and decide what to watch. It's better than it's ever been, as far as I'm concerned. So that I'm optimistic about that.
I want to thank you all for being here today. It was such a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you for your thoughtful answers. And most of all, thank you for your art. Please go make more things that we can all watch. Please, please, please. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Spectrum News 1 LA Times The Envelope Roundtable was brought to you by the Apple TV Plus comedy series Dickinson for your Emmy consideration in all eligible categories.